Officers' summary and updates will be given. Items involving attendance by the public will be dealt with first, and speakers are restricted to 3 minutes, with a warning when 30 seconds remain. Any councillor not on the subcommittee who has requested to speak will also be given 3 minutes. Members to note the information given by officers and speakers, and any decision contrary to the recommendation will require reasons if refused and conditions if approved. In accordance with the Council's equality policy, speakers are asked to refrain from making any comments which could be construed as being discriminatory or defamatory, otherwise it will be necessary to intervene. So we move to item 1, declaration of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Sorry.
Page 137, Chair. The applicant is the son of a councillor who is also a personal friend, so I think at that stage I'll leave the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Along with most of the members of the committee, I'm sure. To a telephone call regarding the item on page 91, which is 01945 Ash Grove, Willerby.
Yeah.
I did not make my comments.
I think we've actually all received comments from both the applicant and objectors, so can I take that as read that everybody has received those?
Chair, I believe the objector tried to contact me, but he didn't actually get hold of me. So I don't think so. Although the applicant did ring me a couple of weeks ago and asked me to go down and have a site visit when it was coming up. I went down and had a site visit with him on one-to-one, but I didn't make my views known on it. Just like to show him.
That's fine, thank you very much. Any other? Councillor Rudd?
Yes, Chairman. Page 91, I had a private site visit request of the applicant, but like Councillor Boatman, I didn't make any indications to which way I was thinking.
Just adding to that, 123 land south of 9 Ripping Road is actually only a few yards from my house. So
okay. So you're declaring on 123 as a local resident. Thanks. Right. Are there any withdrawals? Thank you. So we move on to the schedule of... oh, sorry. Item 2. Sorry about that. Approve as a correct record the minutes of the proceedings of the subcommittee held on the 2nd of September. Moved by Councillor, second by...
I wish to challenge the minutes on 7841 on page 4.
7841. Right, what's your challenge?
Well, I don't think that resolution there, thank you, is strong enough. I don't think it represents the discussion that took place at the meeting. I mentioned that the reasons for refusal were orientation and siting, overbearing nature and particular closeness to house number 4, loss of number 1 and number 4's amenity, and out of consistency with the street scene. I also mentioned that the original application was based upon wrongly submitted drawings, and therefore the original planning would have to be held under some future discussion as to whether that was still valid or not. So I don't think that that in any way is reflected, particularly the first 4 items I mentioned, in that resolution.
Okay, I would point out though that of course this is the minute of Tracy of the minute that was of the recommendation, but I will just ask officers to comment if they would please. From legal, gentlemen, is it not working?
Obviously, officers took notes following the meeting and told that this was the minute that was the most appropriate to put forward timers, and that's obviously for you to consider. Normally, as would have to happen there, minutes would then be approved and seconded, and we would go through an issue and a notice of decision. Obviously, we've got an issue with that, and the members consider that you need to go back and bring this to the committee again to clarify the resolution that may be the case.
Well, shall we let Councillor Jeffries say his...
Councillor Jeffries, then.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I do recall talking about sighting, scale, the fact that it wouldn't fit on the plot if it was orientated the correct way, because originally the drawings which showed this site plan were wrong. And I went through all that that we talked about previously. I don't think that's reflected there. It does talk about the overlooking onto the main bedroom window number 4, sorry. That's wrong. The effect really was the effect from number 4 to the new dwelling of the overbearing nature of the new dwelling. There is no view from the new dwelling into number 4 because it got obscure glazed windows. It was the other way around, and that doesn't say it there.
Okay, well, I just need to take advice from officers on the specifics of the issue.
Does that actually make
The application of that. Okay. That will actually mean then that that particular application will have to come back to the committee.
Well, can I then go on to my second point? In actual fact, I understand that the applicant has gone for non-determination because the resolution has not been circulated in time. The notification.
That's a decision, yeah.
So he's gone for non-determination.
Yeah, they will have 8 weeks to appeal to the planning, etc. for non-determination. However, in a normal course of events, should the appeal for non-determination, it would still come before the committee for their views on the matter anyway, so it would still be fine for it to come back to the committee. So if you need clarification on that, maybe.
Sorry, can you explain that to me again? You haven't sent it out.
The notice decision hasn't been issued now.
For what reason?
Because there was a challenge from an objector and a daily challenge received by the to what the meeting was saying. So officers felt that it would be sensible for members to clarify the minute before a notice decision was issued.
Well, I don't understand that because were I not to just challenge that there and the matters arising because we were going to go to the votes, that wouldn't have happened.
Can I come in there, Chair?
Yes, you can. Yeah, for clarification.
And I think, Councillor, I think that's the important issue here. I think essentially, the minute is drafted as in everyone's effects in a true recollection of what actually happened at the meeting. With regard to that one particular issue, remember it was a very contentious issue and it had a number of other different issues which were being raised in relation to it. And that's why officers did push very hard for that, for them to be very clear in relation to that. I think essentially the reason why the issue hasn't been issued has essentially been proven now in terms of the fact that the minutes have been written. If the decision had been issued, it would have been issued in relation to that minutes as you just mentioned. But you've actually just mentioned also that the minutes are not, in your opinion, is not a correct record. So officers have waited for, essentially for today, for these minutes to either be ratified and hopefully would have been agreed by members as being a true record. We would have then been in a position to issue the minute in clear conscience and knowing that that was agreed forward way for members and that they would have had member support for that reason for refusal. That hasn't happened. The appeal against non-determination, that is not an unusual appeal in any case. It happens quite often. And what would normally happen is an application would then, once that appeal's in, an application would then be put to the next planning committee with a recommendation, and members essentially would say what their recommendation would have been in any case.
So what you're basically saying to me is that as a result of the objector ringing up regularly to clarify the reasons for the decision notice, what that would say, you left sending out that decision notice, and that has resulted in a matter of non-determination being put forward by the applicant.
With respect, Councillor, no, that's not what I'm saying. What we've actually said is we want to make sure that the minutes and decision notice reflected fully the views of the planning committee, and members would have supported by ratifying that minute. And that officers could have then proceeded to that appeal and write drafting that decision notice in full knowledge that that members were in total agreement with that reason for refusal and the reasoning behind that. So it's not, so that so basically it's not the case. The case is that we've waited until that minutes have been ratified, so we have surety of what's been said was the views of the members. Once we have that surety, we could then issue the decision notice in full and unequivocal support from members know that that is reasonable. Today, the slightly unusual in some respects, but the minute has been questioned, and so therefore I would suspect that actually hanging on until today's meeting to actually find out what members' exact view was with regard to the minutes from previously was actually the right thing to do. So we haven't exactly, the officers have not issued a decision notice, which members today are actually saying would have had a, wouldn't have actually reflected the views of the meeting.
Well, can I remind you, if I can continue?
You can, yeah. I think it's an important point.
It is an important point. Can I remind you that the last meeting was the first time we've ever been videoed here, and I have seen that video back, and I mentioned loss of amenity to 1 and 4, overbearing nature, orientation, sighting, effects on the neighbours in terms of its closeness. So everything I've just said as a record, I mentioned, and I've seen it back. Councillor Ibson had mentioned virtually exactly the same thing. Councillor Head asked you to clarify the position with regard to if it wasn't there or not, and you said that we have to look at it, is it not there? She came back with the point, I wouldn't have approved this anyway, even if it was originally come forward as drawings. Councillor Boatman agreed with everything Councillor Jeffers has said. Said if it was a blank canvas we would not be approving this, the orientation is wrong, the footprint is wrong, the permission would not have been agreed. Councillor Jeffers said it's too big for the site, even if it was positioned correctly. It has a skewer to make it fit onto the site. To build a hat site on that footprint would not be...
Can I just stop you there? With respect, that's the debate that took place.
Yes.
This is a record... No, I'm just trying to explain from his point of view. What's written in the minutes is effectively the decision notice. So whilst I understand what you're saying, that doesn't fully reflect all of the reasons for refusal, it wouldn't have actually itemised every sort of, the whole debate. It's actually what was put to the committee at the point of approval.
But the point I'm trying to make is every councillor virtually that spoke mentioned those issues that I have said.
And I'm not disputing that that's not so enough.
So in actual fact, the minute does not reflect. This is an important point of principle because it has major implications. I cannot see why the minute could not reflect the points made by 7 or 8 councillors.
And that's the point that we're now, I mean, as I understand it now, that's the reason that the officers want to bring the application back, so that the...
Which has resulted, though, in a non-determination, and that will go to the inspector, not as a refusal, but as a non-determination.
If I may clarify that, what actually happens is that's not entirely correct. It falls to the inspector to be determined, as would any appeal in any case. The inspector always looks at an application again. The supporting information which is provided by the council, it's not, the inspector doesn't look at blank canvas. He will look at the essentially, in essence, what the reason for refusal would have been from the council. The council will draft their statement of support against that proposal, in line with the views essentially taken from the minute itself. And that will be robustly defended at appeal. In essence, it's a non-determination application in some respects is very little different to an application against a decision notice. The issues will be looked at very carefully by the inspector. The authority and officers will defend those reasons as robustly as we always do. And then the inspector will make their own independent decision based on information before them.
Chair, could I ask a point then on that? Which decision notice will the inspector be looking at? The one that will be coming out, talked about, that we're going to look at again in 3 weeks' time, or will we look at the new one in 3 weeks' time that we will send out?
The course of action now, Councillor Jeffries, is that given the situation where we are with this particular minute, what we'll do is we'll bring that application back to committee, and then we'll seek a clear and unequivocal resolution from members. That will then be, essentially, that will form the decision record, the decision record. And that would be the decisions the authority would have taken had they been able to determine the application.
And that's the one the inspector would consider when he's looking at it?
That is the one the inspector would consider.
Councillor Boat.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was, if I recall rightly, at the last meeting, there was several applications that went against officer recommendations, and the officers was putting this committee under a lot of pressure to come up with reasons for going against their recommendations. And I think Chris in particular was, putting the committee in, particularly on some of them was a bit iffy, probably reason. But this one was clear, and I think the reasons was laid out, as Councillor White has said, but the minute that's in it doesn't reflect the reasons it was given. Orientation was definitely mentioned, and that's not in the resolution.
And before we go on, can I just ask, Jan, can I ask why the minute, because we're here to ratify minutes, can't the minute just be changed?
Yeah. That's exactly what we'll be doing at the meeting in 3 weeks' time.
So we can't.
Just for clarification, we take as many notes as we possibly can, and the Systematic Services draft the minutes and we clarify our notes. We felt that was an appropriate minute for the meeting. Obviously not without the benefit of the recordings that you can watch and re-watch really. And done our best in that respect. Because of the concerns raised in relation to the minute, and obviously because of the concerns raised now, I think it was the right thing to do to wait till today's meeting.
Can I just make one
Very briefly.
Okay. This is a controversial application. This has been to this committee before. We got an application that was based on faulty drawings, and when it was approved, it was built out in the wrong position. It came to the committee and it's been refused. It's come back again and it's been refused. I think it's had 36 votes against it and none in its favour. It must be a world record.
Well,
I just find it very, very concerning that what a number of councillors said at a meeting is not reflected in the note there. And surely, when it is recorded and it is videoed now, you must be very careful. We must be very careful to make sure that these things do reflect, particularly on a matter such as controversial and so difficult as this. And I think it's tautology almost to come back and say you can't. You felt it was going to be controversial, therefore you put a different minute out than was actually reflected.
No, I don't think that's Councillor Whitehead, I don't think that's what was being said. Can I just get the officers to answer that particular point?
Without wanting to get into a protracted debate over this, that is, I'm sorry, but that is not what the officer said, and that is not the intention of it. Today, in some respects, I think James made the point very clearly. The minute was drafted. There was a number of different issues that were flying around from members. We'll try to clarify all those points. We'll try to distill them into a reasonable minute, as we always do. Because of the controversial nature of this particular application, because of a number of different issues that were coming around, because we've had two applications being considered at the same time, we felt that it was the safest route and the safest route to be able to defend the reason for refusal, not irony, was to wait for the minutes to be ratified, to be absolutely clear. So when there was no, so essentially, part of the applicant's support of the appeal couldn't then have been our members weren't clear about what was being said. Because we could have actually said, well, actually, that minute had been ratified by members. Members have clearly said this and have agreed with what officers have said. In terms of what's been said now, I think this discussion has been very helpful. And actually, in the fact that the members, you've made it clear that you're not happy that this is a substantive and reasonable record. In that case, and what officers would always do in that case, is bring the application back to committee. We'll seek a firm and clear resolution from members, so that firm and clear resolution will actually act as a very surefire resolution from members. That is very hard for there to be any argument to say that was not the view of members. This is clearly, when officers defend it, we have a very, very clear view of the members and what the view of the authority is. We'll make that the job of the officer who's defending this appeal that much easier. And then we can move forward from there. But I do take issue, it was not for any other reason other than to make sure that we have the strongest possible case of appeal.
I'm going to bring this discussion to an end. I think that all of the points have been discussed very thoroughly, and I understand that the feelings of members. We all felt very similar at the last meeting. We all actually, it was a unanimous vote that it was refused. So we all felt the same way. I think it is a matter just of fine interpretation to clarify. Well, it is. So I'm going to rule on this now that it comes back to the next meeting, because that's the only alternative, so that we can absolutely clarify what the minute says, and I'd like then to move on. I don't think there's any criticism. I don't think it's right that we should be criticising officers because they are trying to do absolutely the right thing by the minute. So I'm going to leave the discussion at that point and move on. Thank you very much. So we need to approve the rest of...
We can't do that because we've got objective.
We need to move the rest, with the exception of that item.
Yes.
I'll
move those minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. So they're moved and seconded with the exception of that item, which is to be brought back next time. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. So if there are no withdrawals, we'll move on to the schedule of planning applications, and we start with page 91, 9 Ash Grove, Willerby. Can I ask, are there any updates, please?
There are, Chair.
Chairman, can I just make a point? Gentleman there is videoing. Is he videoing correctly?
He's allowed to video.
As long as it's not disturbing the meeting.
As long as he's not disturbing the meeting, he can video. No, that's with the fixed cameras. We're all fairly new with the process of videoing and recording. So if members can bear with us at this stage, I think we're going to find one or two anomalies that might occur. So please bear with us until there are greater clarification on all the rules. Thank you. So update.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, so some fairly lengthy updates, so I hope members can bear with me on this one. We've had further letters of objection from number 4, number 8, and number 20 of Ash Grove, and number 28 Hawthorne Avenue. The further letters of objection include the following comments. The lateral ridge height is higher than approved by the inspector. The extra bedroom has been provided, and the house is now vastly bigger than the house that the planning committee had rejected. The planning inspector stipulated that the development must be built in accordance with the approved plans. The question is whether the recommendation holds up to the requirements of the planning inspector, and if it is approved, it will set a precedent. The street is becoming overdeveloped. Semi-detached railings look out of place. Building houses bigger than originally approved is disrespectful. Recent developments is likely to be the cause of poor drainage in the area. It's a muddled picture as to which is the correct height of the building. There's an email that suggested that the lateral ridge height should be 6.6 metres from the agent and 7.7 for the peak ridge. The height has not been independently calculated, the ridge height. Side lateral ridge heights have been increased by 99 centimetres from 6.6 metres to 7.59 metres. The central peak is increased by 3 centimetres. Roof mass increased by a significant extent, giving an over-dominant appearance to the building, adversely impacting upon the street scene and the amenities of the 6 and 11 Ash Grove. Approval has been given for 3-bedroom properties, not 4-bedroom properties. None of the changes have been brought about through the need to make any changes. The decision to make a revised application could have been made before the dwelling was constructed. Construction started before the drainage plan had been approved. There is no stone lintel shown around the windows. External doors have changed and the side pitch of the roof are now much lower. The building has gone way beyond what would be acceptable in Ash Grove. Previously it was stated that the area to the front was to be landscaped. Space has been left to allow side garage and additional extensions to be provided at a later date. Application includes nothing regarding outstanding issues relating to drainage. The site plan is misleading as trees could not be planted in the proposed positions because of the drainage system. The utility plan is erroneous as it shows incorrect utility points. The change to the internal layout has resulted in a significant loss of natural light and therefore the need for further light sources as indicated by the proposed floor plan. The figures presented to the planning committee are inaccurate. None of the building considered should be, no part of the planning consideration should be that the building has been built, and the planning committee refused the smaller 3-bedroom properties. That's in terms of this further objections from residents. There's some further updates to the panel. Page 91, we see that the officers have set out a table setting out where the amendments between the scheme as approved, and that's approved by the planning inspector, and the scheme as built. Apologies that there's some inaccuracies with regard to the figures given to the plan as built. Essentially that's arisen from the fact that it's scaled from a photocopy plan as opposed to a FAD plan that came from a plan printer. So members, please be aware that as I go down that column that says as built, the width should be 15.3 as opposed to 14.9. The depth should be 10.7 as opposed to 10.5. The depth of projecting 2-storey sides at the side section and the next section down should be 9.5. The ridge height and the eaves height of the central gable, those two remain the same, 7.7 and 4.8. And the ridge height of the side projecting sections is now 7.6 metres. Eaves height of the front elevation of the side projecting sections is 3.3 as opposed to 3 metres. And the last one on the table is the height of the side elevations of the side projecting end, that should be 4.9 metres as opposed to 4.05 metres.
5.9.
Oh, sorry, did I say 4.2? No, 5.5. 4.9. So instead of that last figure, instead of reading 5.05, it should be 4.9. Okay. Right. Unfortunately, as there is a further inaccuracy in the plans that have been brought to officers' attention. In terms of the depth of this area here, if I highlight this area here. This is the projecting gable on the side, the projecting sections on the side here. Officers have been to re-measure the site, and the depth on the plan here shows the depth of that section as being 7.8. Although that hand's going along the top there, has been 7.8. Officers have been down to the site and have re-measured that, and we've got an approximate depth, possibly to be 100% accurate, but from as good as we can get it, the approximate depth is, we reckon, of that section there is actually 8.15. So that distance from there on the plans is shown as 7.8. In actuality, it's more like 8.15. So essentially, it's 25 centimetres approximately deeper at that point, and so that gable pulls that fall there. So if members are wishing to approve this application, we would suggest as officers that will be referred for a further amended plan to be submitted, correcting that anomaly on the plan.
Can I just ask?
Well, can you save it until after that? We've got people.
I'd like to do it before the applicants.
If it's a very brief
With
question.
the consultation process. Can I ask, the calculations that I've seen actually said the house is something like 10% bigger than the approved plans. If that is the case, and the drawings, the measurements that you sent out are not showing the house at 10% bigger because you've scaled them off photocopy plans, you haven't consulted on the correct drawings, and we haven't got the neighbours or the parish councils or any other statutory consultees' opinions on the actual correct drawings.
These are the actual measurements that have been taken.
What's actually happened is the original plans came in, they were found to be inaccurate. We then asked for further plans to be submitted, and the consultation was carried out in relation to those further plans. It is those further plans that I'm referring to, is the plans because they're submitted electronically, and it's the fact that it was essentially when the officers printed them off. We're not saying that those plans, those anomalies are further anomalies. They're essentially, when the officers printed it off, is used, the photocopy is printed off because it says it's at A3 level, and without realising, and not unreasonably to some extent, that the photocopier does actually shrink the plan ever so slightly. So what he's actually measuring was it was a slightly inaccurate figure. But the actual those plans are the ones that are actually on the website and have been out to consultation. The further anomaly, which is one I mentioned to, which hasn't been, is the one we discovered towards the end of last week, and that's when I referred to that area there. That's where we say we were asking for a further plan with regard to that extra 25, approximately 25-30 centimetre depth at that point there. You're looking at something which is essentially around a foot longer at that eaves level in side elevations. So in terms of that, that's why we're suggesting now as officers that if members wish to approve the scheme, that further plan is submitted. And in terms of the consultation period was carried out in relation to the amended plans, not in relation to those further amendments, because they have only arisen as a result of.
Okay.
They've only arisen as a result of measurements within the office, not as the fact that incorrectly submitted in the first place with regards to those plans.
Okay, right. So I'm going to move on. That's the end of the updates.
Oh, sorry, Chair, not quite.
Oh,
We've got a further letter that's been submitted from the applicant's agent, who's actually unable to attend the meeting today. As requested, in line with our normal policies, it's a very short statement, which I can actually read out. He said, I'm unable to be at the meeting as I will be on holiday, and I'll be grateful if you could bring the following to the attention of the committee. On behalf of my clients, I'd like to apologise for the errors which have resulted in the dwellings being built other than in accordance with the approved plans. However, the important point is whether the changes as such have developed a significantly adverse effect on the appearance of the area and or residential amenity. The report includes a table which sets out dimensions. I believe these are taken from printed copies of the PDF files. The PDF files are created from a CAD, and the difference between the production of a CAD drawing, computer-aided design drawing, and the printing of a PDF, and there is a chance that discrepancies will creep in. The attached drawing shows the front elevation of the as-built dwelling with the approved dwelling superimposed. Measurements have been stated, and these are taken from the original CAD drawing, not from the PDF. And that's the plan that the agent is referring to, that one, where they superimposed the plans in red next on that. As concluded in the report, the amendments have not resulted in a greater impact on the appearance of the area or the amenities of neighbours. With respect, if the council wishes to refuse the application, it's going to have to show that the dwellings as built cause significant harm when compared to the impacts of the dwellings as approved. The application cannot be refused because the applicants have not built what was approved. I agree with the conclusions in the report that the dwellings should be approved as built. Thank you, and that concludes the updates.
Thank you. Well, I'll move on to Mr. Graham, an objector. Would you like to take the seat at the front? Get yourself settled, and there's a button in the middle of you press the button in the middle to turn the video on. Thank you very much. You're on, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. Again, I'm privileged to represent a large and wonderful community, though yet again a community under threat. This committee previously rejected the 2 3-bedroom semis at this site, later approved with strict conditions by the inspectorate. These conditions unsatisfied, the developer chose to advertise and build 4-bedroom semis, now to have garages, yet still, after many revised submissions, has failed to submit accurate plans and correct measurements. The planning department acknowledged this, but further compounded this with their own incorrect measurements, meaning that they recommended approval using completely wrong figures for the as-built plans, now expecting you and I to accept the applicants and their own proven errors. How can it be just to allow an early forward application with inaccurate plans to proceed to committee? The property is now oversized with an increased mass calculated at around 2,911 cubic feet larger than approved. All this for an extra 69.9 square feet on the first floor at each property, enabling enlarged en-suites to be moved and an extra bedroom to each. Where 80% of the ridge was originally stated as to be 6.6 metres of ridge height, now at 7.59 metres, it is essentially a metre taller, with the upper side elevation and roof nearly 2 metres wider. The building is now essentially an 8-bedroom, 4-bathroom, multi-reception room carbuncle, now relating to nothing else on Ash Grove. Repeatedly told he continued his own peril, today is the day for that peril. It is an overdeveloped, over-dominant intrusion, visibly destroying the character of Ash Grove, spoiling the amenity of neighbours and causing an oversized blot on the street scene. Allegedly a minor change, granted a free go application when the true cost to a community is so enormous. Why have the planning department refused to publish letters which drainage issues mention, attempt to control my speech today and prevent me from showing pictures and an email already in the public domain? None of the changes to the approved plans are due to need, therefore may be considered solely due to greed.
30 seconds.
We believe that the development has yet again illustrated the Northella is contempt for the community, locality, the planning process, inspectorate, and given his criticism of the committee in the Hull Daily Mail, contempt for yourselves too. Councillor Jeffreys previously described Plot 1 as a monster. Today you are asked to make a crucial decision about the monster's illegitimate twins. You are the only truly democratic element of the planning process, and we have and remain grateful for the support and consideration you have shown the community.
I'm sorry, your time's up. That was actually quite well timed. Just give me an improvement. Thank you. Right, we'll move to the debate. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. Well, again, it's just we have two controversial applications in my ward. One is a matters arising in this one, so I do apologise to my colleagues around the table and to the public, but I do feel very passionate about this one as well. This is an area where the roads are named Ash, Beech, Hawthorne, Lilac for a reason. It's an orchard type area. It has an amenity, it has a feeling about it. It was very open, lots of bungalows. When this application came in to take down a perfectly good bungalow and put up these two houses, originally the developer wanted to put up a pair of 4-bedroom semis and 2 garages. That was subsequently, after discussions, I understand, with the officers, reduced to a pair of 3-bedroom semis with no garage. We refused that because of the impact on the street scene, overbearing nature, and also amenity to the area. The planning inspector did not agree with us, unfortunately, and the developer got approval. He then went ahead and built something very near akin to what his original first discussion was with the officers, i.e. a 4-bedroom house, and it was advertised by a local estate agent as with garages. So he knew what he was doing all the way along. Now we've got the issue, the fact that the actual measurements are considerably different to what was approved. To the point where the house that we said is 2,900 cubic feet greater than the approval that the planning inspector gave. Also, the materials used are substantially different as well. This is something that is well out of keeping with the area, very much out of keeping with the street scene, and it has a major impact on the area. It is a loss of amenity to the area, and it is overdevelopment. I am proposing that we refuse this.
Thank you. So it's moved and seconded to refuse. I'll take other speakers before we move to the reasons for refusal. Okay. Well, I did actually have Councillor Whittle down to speak next, but I'll make note of people to speak after.
Thank you very much, Chair. I went on the site visit this morning, as you know, and I looked at this place and it filled me with a feeling of depression more than anything else. It is, as Councillor Whitehead said, an overbearing, out of place structure. I'm aware we can't really do a great deal about that, but if there's one thing that really does get my gourd and make me so annoyed, it's when an application is passed by a planning inspector, perfectly viable and sensible conditions are placed on that application, and then the developer goes off and does exactly as he thinks fit. And if that were a suitable reason for refusal on its own, I think that should be the way we would go. There are reasons for conditions on all planning matters, Chair, and particularly if placed by the planning inspectorate. If Councillor Jeffries hadn't put in front of me, I would have seconded Councillor Whitehead myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I agree with what's just been said. It is a massive house in a street of fairly small scale developments. Right next door there's a bungalow. On the other side there's a dormer bungalow. On the opposite side of the street there are bungalows. And then you've got this huge house. When it was approved by the inspector, it had two hipped roofs, I suppose I would call them, with a lower ridge height, which I suppose to an extent mitigated against having a huge ridge the full length of the building. So it did help a little bit to cut down on the sort of mass of the building. What the developer's done is simply lifted that up, so in fact the whole ridge from one end to the other of the building is the same height now. One thing that's not in this scale, this little chart that you have of size of the building was on, is the size or the length of the gable end. By lifting the roof height, he's been able to actually extend the side of the house as well. And that's been extended, that big blank wall facing onto a bungalow is now 2 metres longer than it would have been originally. Now that's not on these plans, or on these little target table they've got. And I think that makes a big difference as well. So it's not just height, it's the actual height or width of the gable end of the house. And the effect that then has on the bungalow next door. They have 2 living spaces, and we walked down the side of it this morning, as you know. There's a side window in the bungalow, and then there's the whole other side of their, it's like a conservatory, it's like an extension on the back of the house. Presumably that's one of their main living spaces. And they're looking out of that, straight onto that gable wall, which is even now 2 metres wider than it should have been. And for all those reasons, Chair, I believe that the effects on the area, the street scene, the neighbours' amenity, it is just wrong. And it needs refusing, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor West.
I concur with everything what's been said I concur with everything what's been said. But I'd like to look at the conditions which the planning inspector put in. He said development on number 3, page 4. Development shall be carried out in accordance with the approved details. And this gentleman hasn't done it. And also, on the number 10, on page 3, he said it is necessary to require the development to be carried out in accordance with the submitted plans for the avoidance of doubt. I'm sorry, but there is doubt on this now. He's not adhered to what he's been told to do. So I'm voting against it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with all that's been said as well, but I would like to challenge comments which was made by the agent in his letter that you read out, Mr. Chair. He said that we cannot challenge this application because it does not fit with the approved plans. I can see what he means. Each application has to be on its own merits, and we've challenged it on its merits if there are any. But this is the second meeting in a row, as you know, Mr. Chairman, where I have substituted for an absent member. And in both cases, there's been an application which has been won on appeal and has been built, in fact, in excess of what the inspector allowed. I think we need to, through some means, send out a message to the developers that they cannot get away with that sort of thing. If applications are going to be built in excess of the approved, even after when it's been to inspect, then that's driving a coach and horses through the whole planning procedure. If this sort of thing is allowed to happen, then it is making a mockery of planning laws and rules. So I think that's another reason why we ought to challenge this application, Mr. Chair.
Very briefly, Councillor.
Thank you. It will be very brief. It's just a question. We have bandied about the different sizes. The different sizes above and beyond what was approved. I've had someone say 69 square feet, bigger than approved, and then another figure of 2,900 square feet. Have our officers actually measured it, and which is how big, much bigger is it than originally approved or approved by the inspector?
Obviously, no, we haven't done a comparison between the cubic content of the approved scheme and the cubic content of the proposed scheme. What officers have done is actually gone down to the scheme site, assessed the building that's there, looked at the impact on the street scene and the residents, and made a recommendation, which is part of this application. And so in terms of the actual record of whether the building is, in terms of officers' consideration, it's how much larger, obviously aware of the history on it, and the pick up by Councillor Galbraith, I think other members have said, if it, it sounds like obviously members are very concerned about this development, and I can understand why on that side. In terms of being able to defend the reason for refusal, it has to be on the impact of the building as built. It's obviously regrettable that the building hasn't been built in accordance with the approved plans, but that cannot be a reason for refusal in its own right. The reason for refusal would have to be the impact of the building in terms of street scene or amenity, but not, unfortunately, it cannot be, and it will not be defended. It won't be supported if it's purely on the basis of
I was looking at it from the point of, if it is less than 10% bigger, then it's a de minimis amount, and then the inspector will sort of not take account of that. But, I mean, really, you're unable to clarify. So for that reason, I shan't vote one way or the other after.
What I would say, Councillor, you just must come in there just very quickly. Sorry, now I understand the point of your question. I don't see where we're going with that. In terms of the actual, it is more than de minimis, because that's why we have the application before us. We had the opportunity to deal with it as a non-material amendment, and it was felt that the changes were more significant and we would normally accept as a non-material amendment, which is essentially a minor amendment.
Yes. I'll just move on. Councillor Blood, you have a very brief point to make.
Yes, I have, Chairman. The point basically is that the planning inspector has allowed this application. Yes, we agree the ridge height is 0.8 metres higher at the side than it should have been, and why the applicant built it like that, I do not know. But we must remember that the planning inspector has approved this, except for the difference in the ridge height, basically.
With respect, I mean, that's the point at issue. So I think, I mean, that point has been made. So I think we'll move on if you don't mind. So what we have on the table at the moment is refusal, which has been moved and seconded. What we now need are reasons for the refusal.
Overdevelopment, impact on street scene, loss of amenity on the neighbours, and also the materials are actually different.
So,
dominance of the neighbouring properties as well.
Yeah. Have you got each of those?
At the risk of being shot down, can I just clarify? Just one. Councillor Whitehead and Councillor Jeffries have said something quite similar, but probably will be minuted slightly differently. So I just want to clarify. Councillor Whitehead saying it's the impact on the amenity of the neighbouring dwelling, and then Councillor Jeffries has added into that the overbearing nature. Is it not?
They both be?
I'm not saying there is any inconsistency with that. It's just that if the amenity, we look at issues of the visual impact, whether it's oppressive or visually impacts the neighbour, whether it's overlooking, whether there's a loss of light. What I'm saying is,
all of those things.
Right. Okay, so
This building, for example, is to the south of the bungalow.
Yeah.
So it's twice the height of the bungalow. It must take all the southern light away. So that's certainly a loss of light as well.
Okay, so lots of light, overbearing impact we have as well. So
And dominance of the building.
the dominance of the
and
building.
scale and height. Yeah.
That's. I'm not being awkward, but believe me, it's just that clarification is needed.
I just feel that we must get the, because of what's happened in the previous minutes, that we absolutely get these correct. So are you happy that you've got all of those points right? On that then I will move the vote. All those in favour of refusal? None, I vote refusal. And those against? One. That doesn't need to be a substantive. So that application is refused.
Thank you.
I believe that you